Today we're going to talk about getting MIDI timecode in specific from Reaper into MA3 so that you can design as best you can. In my case, I don't have a piece of MA hardware yet. Mine's still like 3+ months out. So this is the best way I can get it done, and I will show you how to get it all hooked up so that you can get rocking. So first thing we're going to do is we are going to download a program called Loop Midi. I will put the website on the screen for you. This program basically just creates an internal, in quotes, device to allow MIDI to pass from one program to another. Each object that you put into this listing works like another port. So you might have an in port and an out port, a through port, all those kind of things normally on a MIDI device. In this case, if you want data to go one way, have a port. If you want data to come back another way, add a second port. You can do that just by typing in a name and then just clicking the little plus button. In my case, I'm only sending it one way into MA. So this is all the ports I need. All right, once you have that set up, you can download Reaper if you haven't already. It will allow you to run free for a certain number of days. I have a license on a different computer that I use. So in this case, I've already put in a track that I'd like to edit with. And then from there, what we want to do is we need to add MIDI. To do this, what we're going to do is you go up to the Insert menu, and you'll come down to the SMPTE LTC MTC timecode generator. This does as it says, and generate timecode. Put it on its own track. If you want to, you can also name it, because that way you'll see it down here in the mixer. You're going to want to take this clip, and you're going to want to drag it all the way out to the full length or beyond. Let's say you even have more than one track spaced out every hour marker or something like that. Whatever tends to work for you. And then from there, you will have the beautiful sound of LTC timecode. We will fix that. First things first, you're going to right-click on it. Normally, you would go to Item Properties or Item Settings to get to all the stuff. In this case, you're going to drill down one more, and you're just going to go to Source Properties. This is all we really need. Right now, this is what you heard, the Send Audio LTC. We're going to switch it to MIDI mode. If you don't do this, you will always be sorely disappointed because it just won't seem like the generator's working. You'll also notice we are limited to 30 frames per second. Go ahead and leave it on 30. It's just important to note this because we will need it later. All right, hit apply, hit OK. And now at this point, you'll no longer hear the noise, but instead you'll see a little yellow block show up. Instead, you'll just hear the music. So now what we need to do is we need to get the MIDI out. First things before we can do that. We're going to go to the Options menu, and we're going to go down to Preferences. And over on the left-hand side, you're going to scroll down to MIDI Devices. And from there, you can see your inputs and your outputs. In this case, we are outputting from Reaper to somewhere else. So, assuming that you have started Reaper after creating this loop port, if you have not, you will not see Loop MIDI on this list until you've restarted Reaper. All right, once that's done, we're going to just right-click on this and go down to Enable Output. All right, it's enabled. Great, we're outputting MIDI, but we're not outputting the clock yet. You'll notice the one above it actually says plus clock. Right-click again, and now you're gonna have a second option, Send Clock to Output. Now you are now outputting the clock information through that MIDI port as well. Make sure you hit Apply and OK, and we're almost there. Last but not least, you're gonna go down to your timecode track down here, and you can see this little green line. Green means audio. Yellow means MIDI. So what we want to do first things first is turn off master send. We're not sending any audio to the master, but what we are going to do is we're going to go over to the MIDI hardware output, and you're going to select Loop MIDI port 1 or whatever you've called your port over in Loop MIDI. Once that is done, we are now spitting out MIDI out to the MIDI Loop MIDI device thing. All right, from there, I believe we are done. Don't forget to hit save. Very important, or you will regret it later. All right, now we're going to jump into MA3. This is MA3 on PC, which means there's a special setting inside of settings for, believe it or not, on PC. So we're going to go to the on PC settings. This is kind of like configuring your hardware if this was a hardware device. So our MIDI in device is now going to be set to the loop MIDI device. Again, if MA3 was already running when you created that new port over in loop MIDI, you may have to restart MA3 in order to see that new port. All right, so now we're going to select your in device because we're going out of here and we're going to go into here. What you do not want to do is select your output device to be the exact same port, because all you're going to do is spit out the information that's coming in, and it's going to go back out and it's going to come right back in again. And what's going to happen is your clock's going to start jittering around and it's going to look really funny. If you do want to output MIDI, create a second loop MIDI port for your other direction of data. In my case, I'm just not going to turn it on because I don't want to get myself in trouble. Now, you've set up your MIDI in device. The second thing you want to do is go to your MIDI timecode slot. It may have already defaulted to slot 1. So select whatever slot you intend to use. In my case, I am going to use slot 1. All right, now we've got our MIDI routing set up into MA at this point. One other spot to check, should you need to, is over in your output configuration. You just want to go and look and make sure that your MIDI mode, your MIDI information, your MIDI timecode is also listed here as the slot that you want it to be doing. If not, you can change it here as well. Alrighty, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna come down and we're just gonna right click, or you can do a swipey and go to edit on your timecode slot. And what we're gonna look for here, remember earlier I pointed out that 30 frames per second. Right now our generator is probably gonna be talking different. The generator can also potentially affect you, so I'm just gonna go ahead and set it to 30 frames per second. So that way everything is kind of talking the same language. So finally what we'll do is we'll go over to our clock, we'll switch over to our timecode, and we'll make sure that the slot, it might already just be set to selected. It'll have little brackets. In my case, I just want to watch specifically timecode slot 1. If everything is talking like it should, I should be able to hit play and your timecode will start counting. Yay. All right, that is a good thing. If you're seeing the green, we're happy. All right, so the next thing we'll do is we'll go and we'll create a new timecode. So we'll just say store, select it, and then for your timecode, up here in the view, I'm gonna go ahead and lock it into the timecode that I wanna watch. We're gonna go to settings, and we're gonna make sure that the timecode slot that it's listening to is also the slot that has our timecode in it. So from that point, we will have it selected. Now, this is where things could be a little quirky. If I hit play, playhead's not moving yet. Just hit record for a second, something like that. And then from that point on, your timecode will ideally just start following. So it'll start following, and I can tell you why it did what it did. It didn't just immediately pick up. So what you want to do, this is one more setting. You're going to go back into settings and turn on auto start and auto stop. When you do that, at this point, it will also continue to follow our timecode, and it'll follow right where we're at in the music. Alrighty. So from that point, you should have your timecode all set up and talking. Have fun.